Hello everybody, welcome to this week's sort of race commentary by Coach Dave. It's been a while, but I finally found some time to do an FIA race, and the new format is really awesome. But we're going to first start with qualifying, and around the short track and combined with fuel burning, I got to say that the traffic reminded me a lot of real life Blancpain racing, especially at Barcelona, where you were lucky if you got a clean lap. So everyone else decided to fuel burn. I prefer to get into a rhythm. I find more time with the rhythm than I do with lighter fuel. So going around here, this track is very short, 45, 44, 43 seconds in quali, and basically all I was doing was dodging cars. I was in the top tier, and they do tend to go at the same rhythm, so everyone is sort of fuel burning at the same time, and the last thing they expect is a noob like me to be spinning around in the early parts of quali trying to get in a lap. But again, you could send me out on low fuel in this game, and I wouldn't find much benefit as I would if I was getting into the rhythm. Here, exiting the first corner, slight tap, and would you believe it, 3-second penalty. So anyway, that was kind of how my qualifying was going. And one of the main reasons that I use Gran Turismo Sport, and specifically the FIA races, is to improve my temperament in qualifying, and it has shown to give me good results in real life. So another key thing that I do is I try to avoid as much practice as I can. So before this event, I wasn't actually going to do the FIA race on this day, but I decided to give it a go at the last minute, and I had enough time to do some practice laps in the lobby where I raced some of the guys. So on my flying lap here, after the pit stop, and there was more traffic into the first corner. It was like all the traffic in all the world just came out of the pits, which was frustrating because when I left the pits, I had a really nice gap in front of me, and I thought, okay, finally some clean laps. But it wasn't to be. Eventually though, I got behind some pretty fast drivers. I mean, this was a top tier group, and decided to slow down into the last corner and give it one more go, even though by now tyres weren't in perfect condition, because I'd have to do it technically on my second flying lap, but this was the third lap of the tyre. So the tyres weren't in the optimum place, but I had a nice little slipstream from the guys in front, so there was some benefit to this lap. Going into turn 1, you want to get some nice rotation, get the car pointed as straight as possible for the exit. I was in the Ferrari 458 with the Rinaldi Racing livery. Thank you to everyone who's created awesome Rinaldi Racing liveries recently. There's so many now to choose from. So I just chose pretty much the first one I could find. I do have them all in my collection, and I do reshare them in Gran Turismo for those of you who are looking to add it yourself. The most important part of this lap is the last two corners, because you can find quite a lot of time in the slow speed stuff. And in the end I crossed the line to do a 44.0, but I was on the wrong side of that 44.0. I always joke that when I do qualifying, I finish on the wrong side of the 10th of a second, which put me in 14th. But if I found less than half a tenth, I think I would have gone from 14th to P9. So lobby with a lot of points at stake, 3,000 point lobby, and we jump into the start now. And it's frustrating. I think the one thing that Gran Turismo still needs to fix is the rolling starts. The field spread between the cars is just still a little bit too much, and this really compromises your race as a whole. So just at the start of the race, even though I was starting P13, and as you can see I missed the apex because of cold tires, I'm already 11 seconds behind the leader. But to me it's not a big problem at the end of the day, because this was such a high tier and I'm racing against I think, at least in Europe, some of the best guys. Seeing TRL White, you know that a lot of really fast drivers in this lobby. My target is always the same. Without any practice, I want to try get into the top 10. And the cool thing now with the Gran Turismo FIA format is the races are much longer, and the tire wear seems to be a little bit more manageable, which means that there's a lot more variables at play. So even though I don't have a lot of practice at hand, a lot of the guys around me have put in the hours, respectfully, and they've optimized the perfect strategy. For me, it's more about thinking of my feet and seeing what I can salvage out of that, and it just gives me a lot more enjoyment, and also helps me in the real world. I wanted to be a little bit more adaptable in the real world, so I figured that doing FIA races without practice would be a good solution to that. My start wasn't great though, so I needed to hunt these guys down in front. I was hoping to get a much better jump on the car in front of me, already into turn 1, getting a slipstream on the first lap, and then getting them sort of at the end of the first lap. But obviously I missed the hairpin at the beginning, so I needed to hunt these guys down. I was also trying to do some fuel saving. In the short practice run that I did before the race, I'd figured out that I could do the whole race without refueling. So I just needed to make sure that I pitted on the medium tires at the right moment and swapped over to the hards, and avoided refueling. But I think in the end that strategy was wrong. Here I misjudged how early the guys are braking, and I created a sort of pinball effect. It was a light tap that sent the Porsche into the Ford. I thought about letting them through, but I figured, you know what, in the FIA races it is a little bit more aggressive, and I could see that already with the traffic. Everyone's trying to be a gentleman, but at the end of the day you're still trying to race your own race, and they were racing pretty hard against each other there. So yes, I did bump them around a little bit, but luckily no one went into the wall. They just went slightly wide, so I figured I'm going to keep pushing. So yeah, Dirty Dave was at play, but whatever. Some of the guys decided to do multiple stops in the race, so more than one, and I think that maybe at the end of the day that was probably the best solution. We got the, I never know how to pronounce his name, Williams Koke 14, super fast GT Sport driver, has been at the official events quite a few times, and hyper competitive, so to be within sniffing distance of him, to be honest with you, felt quite good. A lot of the front guys were also deciding to do multiple stops, so they were pitting around lap 10 to 12, sticking on another set of medium tires. Some of them were definitely refueling and then going again. You could see that on this lap when they pitted they had 46% fuel and I had 60% fuel, so I think I was undercooking it a little bit. I was short shifting a lot to try and get the laps, to try and get through a lap without using too much fuel, but I think that compromised me 1 or 2 tenths, maybe even more than that, to get closer to the guys in front. So there was a period of the race which we're going to skip, which we already did skip, where I was kind of in no man's land after going up from 13th and overtaking the guys to 11th, and you know, because I'd already made the decision and committed to a decision to short shift, and it kind of, I set myself into a certain strategy and couldn't go out of it. Now my tires are starting to go away, although admittedly this is much later than what you'd expect from the Ferrari, so I'm not sure if they changed the BOP or if there was a slight setup change or even a physics update in the most recent changes or the most recent releases. But the Ferrari is definitely much more usable and drivable in the most recent FIA races over a race stint. And you'd think over a 30 lap stint with a mid-engine car you'd struggle a lot more, but to be honest with you, the car overall was much more manageable, and I think even in qualifying without the traffic we could have maybe done a better job. So I decide, and I'm guessing now, I'm completely guessing, I decide to stop on lap basically 15 for the hards, and now I have to bring the thing home. A lot of guys around me are doing the 2 or 3 stop strategy and just pushing like crazy, maximizing lap time, and this is cool. This is why I like the longer format of these races. It introduces enough variables that even if you haven't got it perfectly right, you are in you can get into a window where other drivers start to make mistakes while they try to get the most out of their strategy, and this brings you back into play. So even though I'm in P14 now, hunting the guys down in front, not really hunting, just short shifting my way around the track, I realize that they are on different strategies, and I could maybe overtake them later in the race just based on the fact that they have to stop again. It also brings some of the guys in front back towards you, because as they attempt more aggressive strategies, it means that they lose track position and have to fight their way through the pack every single time they do a pit stop, and that will obviously also lead to mistakes. So as you start to increase the variables around you, you start to experience the opportunity to maximize on other people's errors, and I think that is something that the FIA races have been missing. You know, when you have the shorter races, you are fixed into a certain strategy which at the most was a one-stopper. you stopped around, let's say if it was a 10 lap race, you either stopped on lap 5 or lap 6, and that was pretty much it. There was not much else at play, and often, even on tight tracks like this, you'd have these processions where no one could really do anything because they had to optimize the race, their lap times according to their tire wear. Now, I think, okay, in this case, I could have pushed a little bit harder on the fuel and should have maybe sacrificed a bit more time in the pit stop to refuel the car. But in the end, my strategy wasn't the end of the world. And at the end of the race, when I crossed the line, I think I'm only 14 seconds behind the overall winner. And at the start of the race, given the field spread, I was already 11 seconds behind the winner. So here, Williams Coquet comes out again, and luckily he was ghosting there. He tried to defend the line, but I was already setting it down the inside. I didn't want to give up that position because I knew that even if I gained, I knew he would overtake me again because he obviously had superior tires and probably wasn't short shifting like me as much. I still wanted those few meters for track position because if he is behind me, then it's a buffer to the guy who's behind him, which was BFR Devil Soul, so ace username mate, and I wanted a little bit of protection from him. Devil Soul had already overtaken me earlier in the race. Again, he was on a different strategy, makes the race much more exciting, and he's going to the outside. Now keep in mind, I'm not here to really race for the FIA events. I'm here for fun, so I don't go aggressive enough. I probably could have defended a bit more, but I probably would have sent him into the wall if I was more aggressive. So yep, I got humiliated. I got overtaken around the outside, and believe it or not, it happens again 2 more times. So BFR now is pushing, and now Coquet, he misjudged how someone in front of him was braking. He bumped into him, slowed down, and I tried to slow down as well, and BFR Devil, he didn't see it either, and it created this pinball effect, very much like my second or third flying lap at the beginning of the race. I was super surprised that I didn't get a penalty here, but at the end of the day, I was kind of in a sandwich there of bumper cars. Coquet was trying to be a gentleman and let the McLaren keep going, but in the end, we didn't anticipate that and got bumped around. Nevertheless, to my benefit, I gained 2 positions there, so we're now firmly into the top 10. And if you just look up in front, Firestorm, who's got a new username, he boxed with almost no fuel on board. So he was pushing as hard as he could and then refueling in the pit stops. So maybe that was the better strategy to go for. Kind of regret not trying this race once or twice more before the event. But again, this element makes it much more exciting for me. Instead of trying to optimize a perfect strategy and trying to race to perfection, that sort of adaptability makes the racing a bit more fun. BFR goes around the outside. I couldn't tell if he had better tires or not, but I'm now stuck in this strategy of having to just survive on the fuel consumption, and I think I'm going to lose another position to the TX3 driver behind me, and he was the guy I bumped earlier in the race, so I couldn't push him too hard. I owed him a favor, frankly. Luckily I didn't send him into the gravel in the first bump, so I didn't feel too bad. But now he's going to slipstream me. I think to myself, how much am I going to push him? He's now got the slipstream of BFR as well. We'll brake for turn 1. He has much better braking performance than me. I probably should have braked later, but again, I don't know what tires he was on. Gets easy move done around the outside, and now with 4 laps to go, I don't want this race to end. I wish there was another round of pit stops. I wish it was a 45 lap race, but obviously the FIA, the time schedule and time slots wouldn't allow for such a thing. I just think that this new format, they finally have nailed it, in my opinion, and these races are just long enough. They could maybe be a few minutes longer, but a 20-minute race is more than enough to get things done. And if you throw in a short track like this where you do a lot of laps, it's even better. In the end, Key and Kelster had a coming together. I'm not quite sure what happened, but Kelster eventually, he got a 3-second penalty for nothing, and he rage quit, so I don't blame him there. And that bumped me back up into the top 10, where we eventually finished. So just crossing the line for 1 more lap to go. Just wanted to bring this race to you, and decided not to live stream it in case I got a disconnect, and as you can see there, my internet connection was really bad. So I decided to record it instead, and it turned out to be a pretty good race. I mean, this is the top tier, one of the top tiers in the FIA sort of allocation, and I was happy, really happy, to be mixing it with the guys. With the last 5 or 6 weeks, not having spent that much time on Gran Turismo besides the track guide. So there you go. Thank you so much to my sponsors, Thrustmaster and Sparko, and also very much big thank you to my Patreon members for supporting this channel. Without them, I wouldn't be able to get all the cool equipment that is in these videos these days. My PC is coming, iRacing and Assetto Corsa. I was expecting it this week, but hopefully next week. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you around the next lap.